Hey guys, welcome back. So finally, it is time to start talking about the graph editor. This editor is connected to two others. It's called the dope sheet and the time editor, and they work in tandem with each other. In order to further examine what it does, we need to first create an animation. Since I've already deleted the last one from the previous video, I'm going to make a quick full-time punch type deal. So without further ado, let's grab this controller, set its key to 0, right? Set its key to 0, and then turn on the auto. Oh, it's already on. That's good. Use the translator tool. Go to frame number 15, and let's say this is going to be our wind up over here. And at frame number 30, we're going to have, well, frame number 25 or 20, our our punch is going to be initiated and finished with a little bit of a rotation from the something like this. Seems nice, although I should have most likely go to frame 0, set this, go to frame 20, and now we get a nice set over here, and then we go to frame 30. And the frame 30 is basically back to neutral, something like this. And this is going back to 0 as well. Okay, so let's see what we've got. If we play this, we have a sort of a punching animation. Now obviously this is not very realistic looking, and it's not really a big deal, but this is something we can work with from here on out. Okay, so I'm gonna kill this animation here for a second, go back to frame 1, and we're gonna open up the graph editor for this. I cannot stress this enough that in this situation it is probably best if you had a secondary monitor. Multi-monitor setups are highly beneficial. They will provide you with an advantage over working speed and the fact that you basically only need to glance from one side instead of popping up editors. Obviously, it's possible to just go ahead and pop it up from here, go to graph editor, and it's going to basically take up the entire space over here. But you know, that's your prerogative, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and open up the graph editor. It doesn't take much space yet, but if we go ahead and select these, you will quickly see that space is required, whether you like it or not. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got. First, we've got all these channels that we don't really need. I mean, if we take a look over here, all of these other frames, yeah, you can slide. This slider is equivalent to this slider, right? So if we go ahead and take a look at these other frames, the only channels that are actually changing are the X and Z. So we don't really need these others. And for that purpose, for that reason, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the Y, the X and Z, and scale and visibility. And I'm going to delete these keyframes, which is, you know, immediately is going to sort out our little problem here. Because now if I select the second one, notice that I still have this whole hierarchy here, which I don't really need by the fact that, you know, I mean, I don't use any of them. Actually, I'm curious, I wonder if I can delete these. Delete? No, control delete, shift delete. Really? Backspace? I kind of thought you were able to delete these. Well, that's a pity. What if I unpin it? Or pin it in this situation? No. Okay. Pinning seems to do absolutely nothing for me. Well, in this case, what is my... let's take a look at what my actual curves are. And my curves are the blue is Z and the green is Y. So we actually need Y. We don't need X in this situation. And I'm going to delete the selected keys. And now we have a very nice and very clean sort of setup over here. I actually, by mistake, deleted that on the other as well. So I'm going to select this one, and now I'm going to delete the X. Delete the X. No? Okay. Right, okay. I'm just going to go ahead and select this one object and just delete these channels like so. delete. Now if we select these two, we will see both of their curves. Okay, let's actually see what we can see over here, because there's quite a lot of stuff going on, which is not unintuitive, by the way. This is a very intuitive editor to work with. So let's work on our hand only at first. Okay, I'm gonna exit the tool here. So we've got two curves, and how do we proceed? Well, the same controls that work in the viewport will operate by the same rules in this graph editor. So A will frame everything, and F will focus on a particular selection. Okay. If you want to select a curve, you should hold down M and select this whole curve. They did this because most people work with keyframes. They don't just work with an entire curve. Obviously, you can move stuff with the middle mouse button, just like just like in the viewport. If you hold down middle mouse button, you can move things. What else? Yeah, the zoom in and the zoom out is obviously with the right mouse button, I believe. Sorry, Shift Alt right mouse. I never use this bit anyway. I just use the obviously I just use the mouse wheel. The next thing here, you'll see that you've got the range slider. So you've got, this is your time slider, and then you've got the range slider over here, which is equivalent to this here at the bottom, this bit. Honestly, if you're going to use the graph editor, most likely you're going to save yourself a lot of time if you don't use, like if you just, get rid of some of these things, but I'm just going to keep them here for vanity's sake. The most important function of this editor is to be able to define and speed up or speed down particular animations. Because unlike the trail over here, if we go ahead, I'm just going to minimize this for a second. If I go ahead and visualize this, and you might say, okay, well, you had the timing beads, right? So if you go ahead and select something and go into and show your timing beads in and out over here, where are they? Maybe if I selected a particular thing, or let's say this is the punch, right? And if I go ahead and select the timing beads in, and you could say, well, all you got to do is just grab this thing and move it up and down. However, this actually does the same thing as you would do in the graph editor. So if I go ahead and check this out, and we'll currently be working on a timing bead, notice how the actual curve is changing. And even though, yes, you could use this to modify the speed of your curves, at the end of the day, you have a much finer and granular control over your curves if you use the graph editor itself. So these timing beads are a good guideline, but they're not a very good solution or permanent solution on this. If you go ahead and pop out the tangents on this thing, where is it? Show out tangent, for example. Where is it? Oh, okay. In this case, we have a very sharp bend here. So let's just grab this one, and there's our out tangent. And you might say, well, we can just modify the trajectory here, and this will also change your curve. However, this is also not ideal because you cannot break these curves. I tried it last time from here. I believe these are mostly here to in order to adjust the trajectory so that you can see it. Rather than just give you a complete solution for speeding and timing of your animation. So really this here is very nice to use when you already have something set up. Maybe drag a keyframe, move it around, and see where your final result is going to be. But at the end of the day, you really want to be using the graph editor. And just like the visualizing trail over here, you can still pop in keys, right? You can modify these keys, and you can start popping in keys. So it's completely acceptable to be working with both of these workflows, and maybe you could insert a key from here and then edit in here. However, because it's like all of this functionality is available to you in this editor, most of the time you will not be using this as your main source of animation editing. So I'm just going to go ahead and select this and delete it. And I'm going to grab this here over this controller so we can work on it. Okay, well, first of all, let's go through the menus available to us. Ideally, you'd want to be, just as comfortable with this as with any other graph editor out there, because frankly, this is not something mind-blowing in terms of its functionality, right? It's just a simple graph editor. There's not much, many moving parts to it. The only difference is that if you hold down spacebar, you will see that currently you have different setups here. So here I've got the select, curves, keys, tangents, list, show, help, etc. Whereas here I don't have these options. So the hotbox changes depending on where you are. You can, if you ever find yourself stuck, obviously, check out the documentation here. But you can go ahead. Most of these things that are available here are basically in the menu. So the curves bit, the tangents bit, all of the tangents are essentially on your toolbar right here. So I hope you know what a tangent is by now. Okay, it's a line that goes parallel to, basically is like it touches itself to the point. Basically, if you draw a line from the point of contact from a particular, I forgot the definition in English. All right, but I hope you know what a tangent is. Okay, let's go from the left here and see what kind of tools we've got. If we wanted to modify, as it is right now, a particular keyframe, we could always just grab it and move it, right? That is absolutely acceptable to grab it and move it. And we need to first understand what kind of viewports we have, okay? I'm going to go back to frame 0 just for vanity's sake. Okay, so here at the left, you've got the 20 to minus 20. This is basically your value range. So it basically means how much value you've got in your on a particular attribute. And then obviously this is your time slider. Sorry, this is your time to which this value is mapped against. Obviously, if I had some driven keys, I would have this mapped against the driven keys value instead of the actual frames. If I had a path, I would have this. I don't actually think a path generates curves. I'm not too sure. I haven't worked with paths that much, but if I had a path and it did generate curves, you would see the paths frames versus the actual frames. Okay, so this is basically like a simple graph. Okay, it's very self-explanatory in terms of the editing. Using the 1, 2, and 3 keys, while it does different things in the viewport here, it will actually give you three different views in your graph editor. So if I select both of these, you will notice that they have different values, obviously. Obviously, in this case, it's not very evident, but if I had something like a rotation, which used totally different values, it wouldn't go above 360 usually. And I had some small x values, you can have like a big mess. So you can use the 1, 2, and 3 keys to give you different views of your of your graph here. You have a normalized view and a and a combined view. Let me just see here. You got the normalized view, and this is the stacked view. My bad. The stacked view is number 2, and the normalized view is number 3, which is from 0 and 1. Everything is normalized to 0 and 1. Okay, most people work with the regular value view. So if I go ahead now and select this, let's go ahead and take a look at these tools here. I'll be completely honest with you, I've never actually managed to use this tool here, which is Move Nearest Picked Key tool. I'm not sure how it works. I've tried it several different times and never really did anything for me. By the way, you can also slide the time slider by holding down K instead of going up here. So if you really feel up to it, you can use the hotkey to do that. But you can insert keyframes here using this tool right here, or you could just right mouse button and insert a key. And obviously you need to select something and then insert the key. And this will insert a key on this particular channel. I believe if you only have one channel selected, like so, and you insert a key, yeah, it's not going to work. So you need to select the channel. Okay, so that's how your insert key works. There's a little bit of a very interesting tool here called the lattice deform, and it is basically the same as the lattice deformer in your while you're modeling. The difference is that this is in 2D. By the way, the same controls, like I said, apply. So Alt and middle mouse button can drag left and right. You should be feeling pretty much at home here. Maybe I should just make this a little bit bigger. So if I go ahead and create a deformer, a lattice deformer here, this will allow me to basically have a very high level type of editing ability on my curves. Now you might say, Jesus Christ, why would you ever need such ridiculously loose level of control on your animation curves? Well, it depends on what you're doing. In some situations, you might actually find yourself that you need this particular tool. After that, you've got the region tool, which basically allows you to scale or move a key, which you just select this particular key. You can move it as it is right now just by left clicking and holding onto it and moving it up and down, or you can scale it with this as well. If you just, I believe if you had a middle mouse button, yeah, you can scale these keys or these keys. Oh, okay. Let's not make it such a big one, but you can scale these keys like so. You can even reverse and flip your keys so that you can reverse an animation if you wanted to. Okay, so this is your tool set. This one, I'm gonna wait until we talk about the retiming tool, just because I want to go over the tangents real quick. Now notice that you've got your stats here, which is your value. Okay, the first one shows which frame you're on, which is currently 15, and the value of the particular stat. So in my case, I have selected Z as notified here by this little box over here, meaning that I selected a keyframe on the Z axis. So the value, if I modify the value over here, obviously I can modify the frame as well, but if I do this, I will know that I'm working on the Z channel. Okay, so there's that. And that's pretty much it really for all the tools. It's not a very complicated tool, but it's a very powerful one at that, because the real power of this editor comes from the tangents. And these tangents give you so much control, it's pretty much ridiculous. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we've got. I'm going to select this right here, so remember, at frame 15, that's when we initiated our punch, right? So until then, we have been basically folding our hand. After this, though, we were extending our hand very fast so that it's like a punch, right? In order to modify the speed of this punch, I can obviously go ahead and modify the slope of this curve, right? This curve represents the speed at which the X value on this channel, right? The X value changes, right? From minus, what is it right now? Let me see. For some reason, I'm not seeing the X value on the channel box. Oh, there we go. So in this case, it goes from -4 to -10, -11 or whatever. So this basically means that I need to increase. If I want to increase the speed of this punch, I basically need to dip this thing even more. Which basically brings me to my next topic, all these tangents over here. Now these first buttons here allow you to basically do the same thing as the focusing, right? You can focus all, they'll just focus on your particular target. So I'm going to ignore these. The first one is the default one, which is the auto tangent, right? You just put it on and it automatically puts you the default tangent that you currently have here in your preferences setup. So in this case, it's just a regular tangent. After that, you've got the spline tangent, which creates a very smooth type curve. You can actually use these pictures here to visualize what's going on. So if I select this, you will notice that there's not much of a difference because this is the default setup, right? The auto one will basically see how close your other keyframes are, and depending on how close they are, will do like depending how close they are, it will choose different tangents. So nothing has changed so far. After that, you've got the clamped tangent, which means that a value will not exceed a particular value. I believe that's what it was used for. The next one is the linear tangent, which is very handy for things like lerping, etc. Linear is a fairly self-explanatory concept. It just goes from one to the other very fast and very easy. The reason it doesn't have a straight line between this keyframe and this keyframe is because this keyframe also has a tangent. So in our situation, if I wanted to really go ahead and make this into a straight line, I would go ahead and select both of these and then transform their tangents into linear. And there's our linear tangent. Very simple. After that, you've got the flat tangent, which basically flattens your, it zeroes out both of these tangents, okay? So in my case, this is not particularly zero. If I move this just a little bit so that you see what I mean. And now I go ahead and select this and flatten the tangents, it's gonna give them a value of 0, meaning that I'm gonna be basically resetting whatever I've done. Sort of. Okay. Our next tangent here is called the step tangent, which is pretty cool. If I go ahead and set this up like that, you will see that it immediately basically changes. It's like a pose, all right? So if you got a pose, it will tell you, you'll basically see the difference of what you're doing, right? So that's pretty nice as well. Jeez, I gotta set up my chair here. Okay, so where was I? Oh yeah, the last one is the clamp to the plateau tangent, which is pretty neat actually. It's something that basically, if I have a plateau over here, which I do, and I set this as a plateau, this means that this curve is not going to dip below my tangent handle. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Most of the time, you want to leave this on auto because unless you have something specific in mind, you can obviously change whatever it is you want to change. So how do we modify the speed of our punch? After all, that's what the whole story is all about. Well, I need to grab this key handle and make this dip more prominent. However, as you can see, this also kind of ruins our other side of the curve. So that's not an ideal solution. We need to break these off. And this is accomplished through these three buttons over here. Obviously, all of this is available through the right mouse button, right? You got all these tangents here. You've got the auto, the linear, the clamp, the fix, the plateau, all of that jazz. You've got the in tangent. You could say, well, I want the in one, like going from, like I want this bit, right? This tangent, I want it to be, oh, I don't know, maybe I want it to be a linear one. And then this out tangent, I want it to be like a clamped one, or whatever whatever it is you fancy, okay? Or a flat tangent or whatever. So it's entirely possible to work just with the right mouse button. And then if you, for some reason want to do something very fancy, you can always just hold down the space bar and grab the curves here, and you've got all of these other things like the Euler filters, which are used whenever you have so many rotations that it's all, you know, mangled up, and this is going to unmangle it. Obviously, you've got these others like the isolate curves, and you can lock different channels and unlock the channels. For some reason, though, there is no way to delete the keys. Yeah, there's no way to delete a key. That is so weird. I mean, not a key, this bit, but like, I mean, an actual channel here. I always thought you could do that. Yeah, well, okay. Let's go back to back on topic. So currently, our tangents are unified, meaning that if I move one, I'm going to move the other as well, right? If I can select it. So if I move one, I move the other as well, and this is obviously not ideal. I can break them apart and say, okay, so currently this is, by the way, this is also going to change the state of my tangent, showing me that yes, I have them indeed. I have them broken apart indeed, which is just fine. So currently I can modify just one side of the handle, and let's see what happens. Let's just go ahead and play this and see what happens. So currently this is getting a bigger dip, a much bigger dip after this frame. Not much of a difference. Let's go ahead and increase the dip here. It's currently weighted in, so there you go. See how it jolts out? Boom, boom, snap, snap. This is what you want to see. Now this is going to be a problem if I increase the speed further, because the value of the curve is going to drop below the keyframe, and you're going to start to see some problems. Like, as you can see, it's even like extending itself. See here? See how the handle is actually extending itself. Now, in my case, this is not a big deal because this is not a stretchy IK, and it's not going to create a huge, like any deformation or anything. But in this case, you really would want to use like a clamped tangent over here, let's say, and let's say you want to clamp this. This should solve the problem. Sorry, my bad. I need to clamp this bit on this one, like so, and now I can actually go further down, and this should not have it shoot out that much. Yeah, so there it is. There's your tangents. Obviously you don't want to do that most of the time, so you can you know, it's not an ideal thing. Then you've got the unified tangents bit, which is basically saying that, you know, do what we just did, and it's going to unify the tangents so that you can move one, you move the other. Unfortunately, it will reset it, so you need to Control Z it if you decide to do something about it. And then you've got this bit here, which you can lock the weights. So let's say, imagine that this is as much as I want to go. I'm going to lock the weights, and now I cannot move this further down. I can only change the direction of the curve, but I can't make the curve go further down. So if I play this, it looks sort of okay. Right now, I probably might need to increase the speed of this as well, because we have a little bit of a of a dip, so it must be something like this. Maybe I even need to increase the value of this thing and just move it down like so, and move this bit down as well. By the way, you can move stuff holding shift so that you don't get the bit, so that you don't get to change the value. So if I move the shift one, I can just move it left and right. So if I'm not going to move it up and down. Currently, if I move it with the mouse button, obviously I can move it up and down. And the same thing goes with, currently it's a question mark, right? Because you can go left and right, and you can go up and down. This basically constrains your movement to either change the value or the frame positioning of the key. So you know, use it the way you basically see fit. Okay, so these are our values over here, and currently we have something that resembles a strike, but it's not very fluid. I don't think the Y, for example, should be changed as it is right now. I mean, if we go ahead and take a look at our Y parameter, sorry, the Z parameter, it basically means how fast our arm is going to be up. Now, if I go ahead and move this key only, oops, my bad. If I go ahead and move this key only, well, notice what's going to happen. This is going to create the bend much earlier. Okay, so notice how it goes first back and then it continues over. It shoots out, right? So you can utilize this to your advantage and to basically be retiming stuff. You can also, by the way, convert this into a an in-between, for example, if you want to. Or if you want to go ahead and create a breakdown, this is also a valid choice. You notice that even though I'm doing this all the time, that this time frame over here gets updated with every change I make, which is very nice because at the same time I can really do some cool, funky things. Speaking of funky stuff, let's go ahead and check these things out, which basically show you the curves at infinity. So you got the pre-infinity and the post-infinity, and you've got two states of that, right? The pre-infinity basically means, if I just deselect this and put the pre-infinity on let's say these two curves. Currently I have my pre-infinity on, and this is how it looks like. And if I say, let's see, we want the post-infinity on as well, then we've got, basically this is going to show you how this is going to look in a loop. Okay, and if I play this, I can drag it basically all around, and it's going to keep playing and keep playing and keep playing and keep playing. The same thing can happen, by the way, with the let me just remove these for a second. Just see. Oh, this is an offset here. That's pretty cool. I never knew these. I never actually had to use these before, but that's pretty cool. You could use these post and infinities. So if I go ahead and cycle this now, you will see that it is actually performing these animations because they are still here. I believe there was a way to remove them. I just don't remember what it was right now because, like I said, I'm not very big on my infinities over here. No. So I'm setting this up as my post and my pre. Like this. So this is pretty much it. Oh, there we go. So that's the difference. The first one is the offset. Oh, that's okay. That's pretty ridiculous. So it grows bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as time goes by. So it shoots up pretty fast. You might want to use this for some particular reason. I'm not sure for what, but you know, let me just focus back on that. Let's just see if I can remove this infinity curves. Pre-infinity. Oh, you can actually, you can even have like these cycles and oscillates in the linear bits. I'm not too sure though how to remove this. I believe there was a way to remove this. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now that we have this bit done, the one last thing that has to be shown is the retiming tool. Now, the retiming tool is basically something that allows you to move whole sections of keyframes. So if I go ahead and select the retiming tool now, and I'm going to add a retiming marker over here. And here I got two options, right? Option number one is to add a secondary timer. And I can basically move this to retime my animation, make it shorter, make it faster, right? More snappier. So notice what happens if I make it snappier. It basically performs faster. Now, because we currently have the pre-infinity on, I will probably also have to lower my playback range to this. Now the whole animation is faster in this case, But that's not to say that I cannot do the opposite. I can increase this, the length of this animation and have it much slower, much smoother. Notice though, because now that I have, let's say I'm going to go to 40 frames, I'm going to move this whole thing to 40 frames. This will move, if I can grab it, this will move the whole frame up, the whole animation up to 40. And this will make it much smoother in that you've got basically more frames to work with, right? Obviously this works both ways, so I can grab this bit and move it at left and right, or I could just remove it. Another option is, by the way, to just put this one bit here and push the entire animation forward or backwards, okay, which is also an option. Now some people don't really like it because, let's say you want to move this bit over here at the back. Jesus, come on, boy. So you can have a lot of flexibility with this when it comes to retiming. It just depends on what you're looking for. Now I'm going to leave this at 40. Can I remove this, please? Thank you. And press Q to exit. I really got to figure out how to get rid of this pre and post infinity stuff, though. So notice how our current frames are actually not in the middle. Currently, frame number 12 is not exactly in frame number 12 and frame number 13. So we really need to snap this thing. So if I go ahead and move this holding the X key, this should allow me to snap it to whatever it is I'm holding right now. Technically it does snap on its own because you have it over here. You can turn the snap value as well, so you can have the snap value here, so it can go from 1 to to be like basically an incremental value. Like currently it's 9, 10. Notice over here, right? Notice the value here. It snaps by 1. These values. So whichever way you want to work with is completely fine. I think it's best to turn it off because animation usually has to be as in order to create believable animations, you really need something that does not look very robotic and very calculated in that manner. So here are my two keyframes. And basically I have my animation pretty much done. Now this is just an example. Obviously I'd probably play around with it until I'm satisfied, change a couple of these tangents here. Maybe I want something to be faster, like I want him to raise his hand faster, but I don't want to change this bit, so I probably break this off and change this so that it's a little bit faster. And then I grab this as well. If I just isolate the Z and I grab this bit and then I go ahead and break the tangents and just move it up and down a little bit so that he lifts his hand a little bit faster. Maybe move this up. Oops, my bad. Maybe move this bit up here and change it to clamped. So notice, see how the plateau works? It basically says you will not pass this value. That's not to say that I can't change it, but it will basically max out the value over here. Now, another way to do this, by the way, would be to grab the tangent key. Instead of lifting this up like that and distorting it, I could just hold Shift and move it to the left. This will lock it so that I don't change its actual value, but I change the weight of this tangent, allowing me to have a sharper rise in whatever it is I'm trying to do. So if I go ahead and do this now, notice how much faster this actually rises. I think I may have had this a little bit too high. I should probably lower this a little bit. So this rises up and then he punches and then he goes back, okay, to the default state. Now in terms of our Y, in terms of our Z, there's really isn't much we get to do here because most of the movement is already done at the beginning. So we can safely ignore this bit and focus on our on our X, which is our main punching activity. So here maybe we should increase the weight of the tangent. So if I unlock the weight, free tangent weight over here, and if I increase the weight, this will make it a lot easier for me to create like this is like a super punch, like so, right? But maybe I want it to be a little bit faster. So let's see what we've got. Like this. Maybe I need to move this further to the left, so I'm going to hold Shift down and move it to the left so that it's a faster punch. And now we should have something of this sort. I need more. I need more speed. More speed. Let's see. There we go. So when you're making animations for a game, this is the thing that defines your gameplay. Okay, this is your bread and butter when you're making something that is directly linked to the animation speed. The timing of your animation is imperative because it will directly drive the quality of your gameplay. If this was a boxing game, I would really have to nail this punch down so that the player, whenever he initiates an attack, that this attack feels responsive. And I'm not saying that it just like you can see it being responsive. The attack must be fast, but also fleshed out. So let's say if you're a boxer, right, you have a particular technique. This technique must be executed flawlessly and quickly. Keyword here, flawlessly. Okay, meaning that it has to be believable that this boxer, for example, really has fast punches and has to look. Even though it's a couple of frames, you might say, all right, listen, it's not like they're going to see the difference between 2 frames. They will. Okay, they will see it. No matter what you do, they will see it because the brain, it interpolates much like this. Actually, in fact, that's exactly what the brain does. That the brain interpolates between frames. So even though they don't technically see a couple of frames, like these 3 frames, they will probably not be seen. And I probably don't really need this to be that far down, so I may need to just rise this up a little bit and turn this into a sort of a plateau or whatever. Just plateau this out and now increase the weight for it. Actually reduce the weight for it and increase the weight for this bit. If I break the tangents apart, increase the weight, this should create sort of a little bit more believable punch. So if I go ahead and play this now, see my Y is very high at this stage and it comes up so fast that I start getting errors. But like I said, this is what you do. You basically start playing around. But it's important to understand that whenever you're making an animation directly related to a player and directly related to the gameplay of your game, it has to be crisp, it has to be sharp, it has to be fast. Unless obviously you're making a horror game where everything is sluggish and the player must feel out of control. Must feel a lack of control in the fact that animations are being locked. You must also understand that all of these animations, let's say in a fighting game or in a something like a Devil May Cry type deal, or anything that requires you to blend between targets, you want to have your animations very crisp, because if the player decides to dodge in the middle of an attack, you must be able to cancel that attack. Okay, like it's not like Dark Souls, that ridiculous game where you attack and you're fully committed, and if that's it, like you die if you don't hit, which is it's just hilarious, especially when people fight each other, they just roll around, wait for someone to commit. But anyway, assume that aside, that little bit off topic aside, essentially what you want to do, always remember, make your animations sharp, believable, fast, and basically precise. Okay, as long as they're that, retiming is very easy. I mean, it's as easy as just dragging and dropping. Okay, just drag something around and you get your retiming correctly. You can retime very easily by dragging a few keyframes left and right? So it's not the timing of the keyframes that matters, but the actual curve over here that matters. Obviously, if you feel that if you feel the need to add anything specific, you can always insert a key over here, for example, right? And you can continue working with whatever it is you're working. Maybe you want to break this apart, or maybe you want to do something like this where it's a little bit rising, so it's like, geez, what happened here? Oh, because I'm going backwards, of course. So maybe you want to go a little bit further down then and pump this up like that. This will create sort of a very exaggerated punch. That's what it's gonna create. So experiment, right? Grab something and experiment around, see what happens. Try to create a couple of animations that you're happy with. Obviously, this is just one controller. Now, if you select the other one, notice that we have an entirely different story over here. You can see both of these curves, and you've got all these tools at your disposal, like timing, retiming, etc., etc. This is also one of the reasons that we've got a problem, because our animation does not go all the way up to the 40-minute mark, so we need to go like that. And now this will create a little bit of a better, there we go, something like that. All right, now over here, obviously I screwed up. It just looks ridiculous. I probably need to change that at some point, but actually no, I'm gonna leave this as it is just for the heck of it. All right, so that's it, guys. I'll see you next time when we talk about the time editor, where we can actually be using this animation here, this data, and create clips. And if you've ever used a video editor in your life, even Windows Movie Maker, this will be a very pleasant editor to use indeed. Okay, guys, that's it from me. Play around with these options over here, and I will probably create a secondary animation for this object, because I want to go ahead and show you something later. All right, if I don't, we'll do it in the next video together. Okay, all right, I'll see you later. Bye bye.